Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, back from my secret mission, which you guys will hopefully be enjoying the fruits of my labor of that secret mission this coming weekend. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel for that. However, unfortunately, that secret mission did involve me having to go outside. And for that transgression, my immune system is punishing me by giving me a terrible head cold because of course. I do apologize if I sound a little off in this video and the next couple of videos down the line, but hopefully it will clear up quite soon. Anyway, while I was away, a new update was released, update 14.2, an update that didn't really have a whole lot for a good chunk of the player base to look forward to, or at least the ones that are always commentating on the channel, right? We're getting Soviet submarines in early access, which of course everyone just can't wait to get their hands on those, right? The new experimental ships have been added to the game, and we got a couple other events here and there, but nothing really too massive besides the Dutch light cruisers leaving early access. However, in the update article, we did get a bit of a surprise. I did not see this get announced beforehand, unless it was announced in one of the few days while I was away. But we are finally getting a new coal ship in the Armory, which is always quite good in my opinion. Anytime we get a ship added to the Armory for coal, that's more free content for us to acquire. And it is a full-on premium ship, right? So it's a free premium ship through and through. And it's a ship that you very well may want to pick up and add into your port. Now, for clarification, while this is a new coal ship, it is not an entirely new ship. The ship has been in the game for quite some time, but again, it is a new coal ship. And that ship is the Tier VIII Premium Japanese battleship, the Key. Now, the Key is, again, not a new ship. In fact, she's quite an old ship. She was first released back in September of 2017. So she's been in the game for 8 years now. Well, coming upon 8 years this September. That doesn't mean she's necessarily bad, though, right? A lot of the best ships in game are well north of 6-7 years old. But do you want to spend 134,000 coal on this ship? Sorry, 135,000 coal on this ship, which, keep in mind, this is a lot less than like a tier 9 coal ship or a tier 10 coal ship, so keep that in mind too with what we're going to be looking at here with the ship, how little it does cost in terms of the coal you have to acquire for it. So, but what is the Key? Well, the Key is the battleship variation of the Amagi design, if you will. I know that's a very down and dirty explanation of the differentiation between the two, but that's basically what it boils down to. The Amagi, believe it or not, is a battle cruiser, according to the Japanese. The Key is a battleship, even though they look incredibly similar and play incredibly similar as well. The Amagi, in fact, I thought for sure when the Japanese battle cruisers got announced that the Amagi was going to be shifted over to the battle cruiser line, so she would finally have a line to fit in. Then, well, they came out and that didn't happen, right? But the Key and the Amagi, it's really interesting seeing how one's called a battleship, one's called a battle cruiser. The Amagi, the battle cruiser, is slower than the Key because, yeah, why not? It's also more well armored than the Key. So, what? The Amagi, which is the battle cruiser design, has better armor and is slower than the battleship. Because reasons. Now, what gives the Amagi better armor than the Key? Well, the Amagi has that torpedo blister that comes up and covers pretty much all of her citadel, meaning that you've got a nice little, void in between the 30mm torpedo armor and then the 254mm bulkhead. Not bulkhead, citadel. So you've got a little void in between there where shells can penetrate the outer armor, detonate, and basically do little to no damage against the Amagi. It's the reason why the Amagi is just so damn hard to citadel from pretty much any range. It rarely will happen. You gotta sneak a shell in through, the cracks or in the, or through the deck or something like that if you have a big enough shell. And through the cracks, I mean, just how sometimes the geometry on these ships kind of just causes whatever to happen. So that's the big difference when it comes to the maneuverability and the hull. The Amagi also has 1.8 Sigma on her 10 410 millimeter guns, while the Key has 1.7 Sigma on her 10 410 millimeter guns. And again, her citadel is exposed. She doesn't have that big torpedo blister like Amagi does, but she is faster, coming in at 31.5 knots versus the Amagi's very slow 31 knots. I know, such a big difference. But again, it's still funny that the battleship is faster than the battle cruiser. That's just kind of goofy because the idea of a battle cruiser is that it's fast enough to chase down a cruiser. Meanwhile, the Amagi can't even chase down her, second removed cousin, the Key. So that's a TLDR description of the differences between the two ships. The Key does also, on paper, have better AA than the Amagi, and when she first came out in 2017, yeah, her AA was pretty darn good. But again, as with many things that have been released in regards to aircraft in this game, things have changed, and while the Key is surely a better than average AA boat, she's not quite shredding planes like she used to back in the day. Like, you used to be able to essentially feel like a Kid or an Alabama or a Minotaur, where CVs would simply just ignore you and drive their planes away and go attack something else that won't eat half, if not all, of their planes when trying to set up a single strike. As you can see in the background footage, not exactly that strong anymore, unfortunately. Now, as far as playstyle goes, the Key and the Amagi, while quite similar, are indeed quite different. The Amagi is more of that, run around the back, use your speed and maneuverability and your accuracy in your main battery guns to dunk on broadsides, look for cruisers that slip up. They slip up from behind an island, and you send 10 410 millimeter guns their way from range. The Key, on the other hand, with her worse Sigma, it can try to do that. I'm not saying it can't. I am saying it will struggle to do that with any type of consistency thanks to the lower Sigma. The Japanese battleships, if you don't know, they have a very, very wonky dispersion pattern. It's this weird star pattern almost. It's not like the American battleships that have a very consistent pattern. It's kind of all over the place. It's how they balance out the Japanese battleships, either having a large number of good caliber guns for their tier or a small number of large caliber guns for their tier. So, that being said, while, yeah, you get 0.1 less Sigma, yes, it's noticeable, you can still very much play the Key from mid-ish range, which is probably where she's really best played from. Because not only do you have the 10 410mm guns, you also have 2 sets of torpedo tubes mounted on your stern, with a range of 10 kilometers. Quite a bit more useful than like the German battleships' torpedoes, which are basically exclusively meant for brawling, having a maximum range of 6 kilometers. With the 10 kilometer torps of the Key, you do have a little bit more wiggle room there to try and entice other ships to, kite into you. They think they're safe, and they're like, 12, 13-ish kilometers away, but you're managing to bait them into you at full tilt. You launch some torpedoes, you get a hit or two on that ship, and there goes 12,000 of their HP. So, that's a pretty nice pickup to have on the Key as well. She's also a little bit more sluggish than the Amagi, so you can't... And the Amagi, to be clear, isn't exactly a spring chicken either, but it's still a little bit more sluggish than that because it is a battleship. And that's how I guess they, factored in the torpedoes. And another little trick up the sleeve that the Key has, her secondary guns. She gets... the wonderful 100mm Harugumo guns that can pen 30mm of armor without IFHE. Meaning that this Tier 8 battleship, her secondaries can pen 30mm. Which is really freaking good to have on a Tier 8, especially when you're top tier, because there's a whole hell of a lot of things that your secondaries simply don't care about because they can pen that 30mm threshold. Even at Tier 10, that is a wonderful threshold to have on your secondary guns. Now, of course, you can fully take IFHE, get that well over 32mm of pen, and just let the secondaries do the work from there on out. That is very much true, but you do have a 10km secondary range. So, while it looks like it's going so good, you got the good secondary guns, you've got the HE that can pen 30mm of armor, a 10km maximum range holds you back. Which isn't impossible to get into a situation with that, within that close with the Amagi, especially if you're, top tier in a tier 8 game, and there's a couple of tier 7s and like a tier 6 down there, then yeah, you can definitely, kind of walk into them and bully them. It's also really good DD repellent when they see all the secondaries light up. They know that they've kind of, screwed up a little bit here. And well, yeah, again, the 10-kilometer range isn't that great, and I went on a little rant about that in the Giuseppe Verdi video. This is still 10 kilometers at tier 8. It's definitely more workable when you're top tier, or even sometimes when you're mid tier with tier 8. Now, obviously, being in a tier 10 game, that's a bit of a different story. You don't really have a whole lot of brawls going on there. But with the improved HE pins on the key, and if you take IFHE, yeah, you really won't have any trouble ripping into higher tier ships at all. Now, do keep in mind, of course, this requires you to not take the Artillery Plotting Room Mod 2 mod. I'm sorry, the Dispersion mod. I went full on American Battleship there. I apologize. The Dispersion mod, because you have to take the secondary mod instead. So your 1.7 Sigma on your main battery guns is going to, show its head here. I'm sorry, show its face here quite a bit if you do go for that build. But again, you have pretty decent secondaries. And yes, if something gets within your secondary range, you're not going to have a good time. So that's a pretty nice thing, in my opinion, that this is a ship that has, in today's World of Warships, 2 actual viable builds. You can take a secondary build, go into like a co-op or ops or brawls and have a pretty good time with it. In random battles, it can still happen with the key if you're smart and play your positions well, but I would kind of just go for, more of a main battery side of things in the key and play it a little bit closer than the Amagi, trying to bait enemy ships into those torpedoes or trying to, chuck those torpedoes down. No torpedo alleys. You would be really surprised with what you would catch with the occasional stray torpedo here and then in World of Warships. So overall, though, do I think it's worth 135,000 coal? I think it is, especially if you have the coupon lying around. The Japanese nation, I mean, we've got a ton of Japanese ships in game and a ton of Japanese premium ships. They can move this commander, all over. And plus, you can also put Yamamoto on the key as well, and you can, pop his Kraken if you get very lucky and have a really, really deadly key there with all those buffs going. So I think it's a good pickup. If you enjoy the Amagi, you're going to like the key. It's just kind of a side grade, more of a medium to close range key. I'm sorry, Amagi than the Amagi, which is typically a mid to long range ship. So it's a nice little toss up there to the design of the Amagi. And plus, again, it's free for the cost of 135,000 coal in the Armory. So I think it's a solid pickup. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What has your experience with the key been here in recent months? I've taken it out a couple of times since reading this news, and you know what? It still does pretty well in my opinion. I still typically come, top 5-ish on the leaderboard playing the key. Again, that's me playing. I've been playing this game for forever. The one class I'm kind of halfway decent in is battleship, so there's that. But anyway, guys, that is my 2 cents on the key. Let me know what you guys think about her in the comments down below. Hope you guys have a wonderful Thursday, wonderful rest of your week. I hope to catch you guys in the next one.